It's the show where Hawaii's newsmakers come to talk and to take your questions live. From the nation's capital to Honolulu Hale, from the state legislature to the fifth floor, we bring the experts to you and ask them what you want to know. Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Pillay-Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
Good morning and thanks for tuning in here on this Wednesday morning. I'm Ryan Pillay-Suji. Yunji Denise has the day off, and this is Spotlight Hawaii, of course, on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This morning, we turn our attention to Red Hill, where military officials last month said that they're about 6 months ahead of schedule in that draining of the tanks will continue and could start as early as mid-October. Now, this is as they continue to be underway with some of the repairs that are needed. But two groups that have had an active voice in this process since the news broke of the spill at Red Hill and this efforts to clean it up have been two organizations that join me this morning. Joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii, Marti Townsend from Earthjustice and Wayne Tanaka of the Sierra Club of Hawaii. Thank you both for joining me this morning. All right. Let's begin with you, Wayne. We're going to just start off with some of this new timeline that has been put forth by the military. You know, as I mentioned in that open, they say they're about 6 months ahead of schedule and could start as early as mid-October in that defueling process. What do you think about this new timeline and your reaction to the way that they've sort of expedited what they initially had laid out?
Well, it's encouraging. It's better than having to wait until July of 2024 until defueling is completed. And right now, you'll just have to hope that all goes well. Overall, though, it will still have taken over 2 years to defuel since the November 2021 leak, which speaks to how decrepit and poorly maintained this facility was and is. And if the Navy and DOJ, really hadn't fought against the DOH emergency order for over 5 months until April of 2022, we could have been defueling right now. And so that's a little perturbing. But I think also the bigger issue is the many other things that will need to get done, even if they defuel successfully before we're out of this crisis, including the 400,000 gallons of fuel that will be left after January, assuming all goes well. Existing contamination that we have to deal with for years, if not decades or centuries, when it comes to the forever chemicals that have been released from the facility. And then, of course, the hundreds of people who are still suffering from some pretty significant illnesses and health impacts, as well as financial impacts from this crisis.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of that this morning. Marti, I want to come to you about this timeline here. We know that a lot of the efforts right now, the military says, is to repair some of the needed issues within the facility itself before they have even begun. I can begin this cleanup and defueling process. Your thoughts about this timeline and the fact that they had to go through all of these repairs even to get to that point where the defueling could begin?
Yeah, I take note that this facility for until March of 2022 was considered an essential asset in our national security. And it is this decrepit, this antiquated, that it's taken this long to get it up to snuff to be able to move fuel. It can't have both ways. Either this, is a state-of-the-art facility that we can all trust, or it's not. Now we have, unfortunately, it's taken 93,000 people being poisoned for the Navy to come to terms with the reality that it is not a state-of-the-art system, and it's not essential to national security. And, if they had listened to the public in 2014, we maybe could have defueled before this crisis happened. But unfortunately, they're hardhead, and now we're in this situation. And we should make no mistake that the reason why the timeline has been expedited is because the public continues to exert pressure on the military and all the regulators to ensure that this facility is defueled as quickly and safely as possible. And Wayne is right. When it comes down to it, on the day they start to defuel, the best we can do is pray. And honestly, the military does not have a good track record enough for me to be hopeful for how this is going to turn out.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that defueling process once it begins. What are some of the concerns that you have that still exists about what problems it could pose, or just the overall cleanup efforts that are currently happening right now. What are some of the still concerns that you have about this entire process as they undertake it? Marti, we'll start with you.
I mean, there's 100 different ways this could go wrong. The facility is very old. They are having to replace every nozzle that they're going to use because the nozzles are just old and failing. They don't really know the system very well. It's 80 years old, and hundreds and hundreds of people have been in a position of overseeing it and maintaining it, to the point now that it's not. People should not imagine some sort of state-of-the-art, shiny Star Trek style fuel system. This is old, janky, rusty, smelly, and scary. And so I'm worried about the pipelines leaking. I'm worried about the tanks themselves. As the fuel is moving, it exerts pressure on the tanks, and they may start to leak as well. I mean, I don't know. Wayne is also an engineer and is probably better equipped to answer this question. Go for it.
Yeah. I want to come to you and ask you a little more about these efforts and what you know and what you're hearing about some of the concerns that have been presented to military officials and how they're reacting to maybe some of the questions about this process.
As Marti says, the defueling process itself poses a significant risk. They have come out with contingency plans in case something does go wrong. My concern is that these plans, of course, are theoretical. The worst case that they're planning for may not be the worst case. And we have to remember, this facility is porous. So if we see a spill of 1 million, 2 million gallons or worse, there's no way to contain all of that. And just a fraction of a percent of a spill of this magnitude would be much greater than the amount of fuel that's causing so much chaos with our aquifer. And in terms of cleanup, we don't actually, it's not clear what their plans are. I mean, there's a lot of ambiguities and hypotheticals, but as far as I know, there's no specific strategy for remediating the fuel or the PFAS that's in our aquifer, that's in the soil, the substrate surrounding Kapukaki or Red Hill. And so, again, we'll have to be dealing with the ramifications of what's already happened for decades, if not centuries. And if something else happens, that those impacts will be drastically exacerbated.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, this is a timeline that's presented if, I guess, everything goes according to plan. I mean, if something happens through this process of defueling, that could further set things back. Repairs would have to be made. Another cleanup would have to be made. So we're looking at the timeline that has been presented as a best case scenario, but noting that there could be other things and issues that really delay this process that could make it last a lot longer than what has been outlined. One of the last times that we talked, Wayne, on this program, we were talking about that second spill that happened in November last year, and releasing of that spill that contained that toxic fire suppressant. And one of the things that you were calling for is more information about video footage. I mean, how have those conversations gone about trying to get more information about that, that second spill that happened in November, and has any new information come about just how bad that might have been?
Yeah. I think one of the things we learned was that this spill of toxic firefighting foam wasn't the first instance. In fact, there were two other instances of this foam being released in 2019 and 2020 that we weren't aware of until the EPA started looking into it. As for the spill in November of 2022, we did finally get the findings of their investigation that they had for months, as well as a video of the release. And I still have no idea why keeping that video secret was so essential for their investigation. They've come forward and said that, the specific causes were because of an improperly installed valve and an automatic release system for the foam that was not disengaged. But overall, the big picture was they just didn't have adequate oversight. And the Joint Task Force realized they, in fact, needed 100 more people to have prevented this from happening. And unfortunately, by the time they recognized that, it was too late.
Marti, I want to come to you and ask you a little bit more related to this. Has just been the overall communication and transparency of the military, something that has frustrated a lot of people involved in this process. Would you say that things have improved recently, or how are things moving along with just communication and transparency when it comes to military officials?
I have seen them. The military has been particularly good at the dog and pony show. So you attend their public meetings and they present an air of openness and transparency. But when you actually try to drill down, you see that they've removed documents from the internet that, it's like the example that Wayne gave, where they will withhold information under the guise of, needing it for an investigation or for secrecy for some reason. And when we actually finally get access to it, there was no reason to keep that from the public. So no, I don't think that the Navy has gotten any better, or the Joint Task Force has gotten any better at transparency and building trust with the public. This is part of the reason why people need to remain engaged. We only get the information that we fight for at the end of the day. I do encourage people to look at the environmental assessment that is currently out for public comment on the defueling plan. And we're in the process of reviewing that right now, and hopefully we'll be able to see there that the military has thought through how they would remediate, for example, if there is a spill, and how they will take care of people who need water. We saw from from November 2021 that they were completely unprepared for the need for residents' need for water as a result of the Red Hill leaks. So I'm hoping that we do not just recreate the same mistakes.
And are you concerned right now at this point about the drinking water and the water throughout Oahu? I mean, what are some of the concerns when it comes to the specific issue itself of the contamination of the aquifers? But overall, just, I think that was one of the things that sparked so much interest in this, because it could have directly impacted many people here on the island of Oahu with chemicals being in the water. What do you still have any concerns about that at this point in time? And, what are some of the conversations that you're having maybe with others who share similar viewpoints?
Yeah, people are very concerned about it. I mean, we don't even know the full extent of the impact yet, right? Like the PFAS and other forever chemicals that were released into our environment have not reached the water supply yet. That's of those three spills that Wayne mentioned. That said, we have found PFAS in our water supply. Unfortunately, we are not set up to handle the situation. Residents who have been notified that their water is potentially contaminated with PFAS have to wait 3 months for the test to come back from a lab on the continent to tell them whether it's clean or not. And that's just unacceptable. I mean, this PFAS spill, PFAS is a problem that is going to be affecting water supplies all around the globe. It is so pervasive. And we need to figure out how we're going to first hopefully prevent the PFAS from reaching our water supply, and then figure out how to remediate that PFAS that is already in our water supply. These chemicals are extremely dangerous, and the military has denied that danger and that harm for a long time. And as a result, the injury is worse than it otherwise would have been. And that's really a problem. So, it's going to take us working all together. Like, no longer are we environmentalists versus developers. No longer are we, Hawaiians versus settlers. We're all water drinkers, and we're all in this together. And we have to figure out, one, how to conserve water, because we are currently relying on water supplies that aren't robust enough to really serve Oahu the way we are used to. We are used to an abundant supply of fresh water. We no longer have that. The aquifers that we're relying on are smaller. We also are in an El Nino year, so we can expect drought, and we can expect high temperatures, and that's going to, really stress out our water supplies even more. And so, even though the military is busy wasting water, watering their golf courses, and pumping off, millions of gallons of water a day in the hopes to catch a teaspoon of fuel here and there. We, the residents of Hawaii or of Oahu, need to do everything that we can to conserve water, to catch water, and to become part of the water cycle ourselves.
Wayne, I want to get your thoughts about some of the concerns that you have still about chemicals in our water, and some of the thoughts that you've heard from those that you represent as well.
Oh yeah, we all need to be very concerned about chemicals, particularly these PFAS, these forever chemicals that we have been finding in some of the border water supply wells. And in other areas. So, we know that PFAS, these forever chemicals, are used extensively by the military, by all branches. But right now, only the Army National Guard has proactively admitted to PFAS releases and publicly explained what they're doing about it. Where is the Air Force? Where is the Marines? We still have no documents from the Navy's spills from 2019 and 2020 of PFAS at the Red Hill facility. So I think we all need to be concerned. We all need to continue putting pressure on the federal government and Department of Defense to come forward with the information they have, to take steps to figure out how we're going to remediate our water or find alternative water sources. And we really, really need on-island water testing facility. I don't think waiting 3 months for a continent-based lab to give us water results is timely, as the EPA asserts. This need to check the quality of our water will be indefinite. These forever chemicals last forever, for centuries. So, we need to start getting the federal government to start to pay to train up local technicians and to stand up a local water testing lab now.
And Wayne, just sticking with you here, one of the things that we know your organization does amongst just following this development, but you've also been talking to the families that have been impacted, as well as those who, the federal lawsuit that is also in place. What are you hearing now from the families? How have they recovered? What are they still going through this process? And what are you hearing from them?
Unfortunately, this crisis has impacted so many families, and in various ways, some much worse than others. So we are, hearing from families who are, still have health issues, and as a result are struggling severely from financial instability. We have people being pushed to the brink of poverty because they need to search out medical care. They need to take time off from work. They had to move. They had to get rid of all of their possessions that were contaminated by jet fuel. So while there is a court case, a federal case that's ongoing, that's being quite frankly dragged out by the Department of Defense to find some relief for the families that were impacted. In the near term, there's a dire need for relief and support especially for the families most highly impacted. And so we have partnered with with a group on the continent, Community X, to launch a national fundraiser on redhillcrisis.com to try and find some relief, at least for the families that are in the most dire situations.
And Marti, I want to just kind of come back to you here as we talk about the federal lawsuits and these families who have been impacted. What are you hearing from them, and what is overall their concern? Because I think oftentimes when we think about this issue, we think of a lot of the military families, obviously, that have been directly impacted, that were drinking from that contaminated water. There were a few civilians involved as well. But what is the message I think that the public should know about some of the things that these families are still going through?
I mean, there's much more than just a few people. The whole Kapilina Estates area is, a lot of civilian families live there, and they are all on, this former Navy lands, and so they're on the military's water supply line, and they are exposed, and they are suffering with, health effects, permanent, long-term harm to their health. This is a forever thing for them. Their lives are forever damaged because of because of the Navy's negligence, and they aren't getting the support that they need. And we, as their neighbors, owe them as much support and help as we can offer. And there's going to be another water, the water delivery, water distribution for these residents, organized by the community, the Red Hill Mutual Aid Group. And this is just another demonstration of how, when we as a community come together, kind of no longer operating in silos, but instead as allies and friends and neighbors supporting each other, that's how we're going to survive this. And I would like to see the U.S. military put forth more money. They have all the money possible. Put forth more money to support Kapilina residents and anyone affected by their negligence from this spill.
As we look through and think about this process that's going on, but also just about this facility as a whole and what happens to these tankers and to Red Hill itself, There's been a lot of talk about what could potentially happen in place and what this Red Hill could look like in the future. Marti, we'll start with you. What do you think this facility should be used for once it's completed, and what do you realistically think might happen?
I think the discussion about the repurposing of the Red Hill fuel tanks is an absolute distraction from what really needs to be done. So people need to just move on from that. The Red Hill tanks should have never, ever been built there. I mean, it was stupid to put your fuel supply above your water supply, like the dumbest choice they could have possibly made. We need to just retire these tanks and pretend and treat them, clean them, and permanently decommission them and not use them for anything else. They should have never, ever been put there, and we shouldn't use them for anything in the future.
Wayne, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Do you think that the military will back away from this facility? Do you trust that this will be something that won't be used in the future?
The thing with this discussion about repurposing is that we still don't know the integrity of the structures that are in place, right? These massive tanks the size of Aloha Tower, we do know they're actively corroding. We can't directly inspect how bad the corrosion is, although we do have a history of through-wall holes that have been eaten through the tank walls. And according to the Navy, the corrosion may even accelerate without fuel in these tanks. We also don't know about the extent of PFAS contamination from the releases we were just discussing. So we really can't speculate as what may be practical or realistic or safe with regards to repurposing this facility. The federal government might have to even condemn the land around Kapukaki just in case of an earthquake or something that causes a collapse. I'm encouraged, and I think this is testament to the huge public outcry and continued community engagement that we've seen. I am encouraged that the Navy has committed to removing the 3 main fuel lines from the facility once they're no longer needed for defueling and decommissioning. That will help to prevent the Pentagon from reneging on its commitment to shut down Red Hill and not trying to restart operations. But at the same time, it may be years before we see those lines being removed. So again, testament to the need for continued community vigilance and engagement.
Yeah, I just want to add that, we should manage people's expectations about what it means to shut down or even decommission the Red Hill fuel tanks. Like, there is a sludge at the bottom of each tank that they're not quite sure how they're going to remove. And so even though they are talking about moving fuel out of the tanks and relocating it, which is good, the majority of it, there's still going to be 400,000 gallons of fuel mixture, sludge, something, contamination that'll be in the bottom of these tanks, and they're going to shovel it out or something. We don't know. And anyway, it's going to be years of monitoring this facility before it can really be, actually closed and the lights turned out and the electricity turned off. But as it is, we need to manage our expectations. We are in for a long haul on this.
As we wrap this conversation, I'll start off with you, Marti. This has just been a long process and a long battle for efforts and organizations like you folks are involved in. But how has the community supported through this effort? And do you still see that strong interest? Because we know when this news first broke out, there were a lot of people who came out, obviously, to the rallies, and there was a lot of support. But over time, this is going to be a long process. Has that support continued to be there? Is it waning a little? And your message this morning to those who may be watching?
The support is still there. But the reality is that, people have to maintain their multiple jobs in order to survive here. And so their ability to give the attention needed to come out to all of the different events and to hold the military accountable is a challenge. And I think, the military is aware of that and maybe uses that. But I do have faith in our community and in our neighbors that when the time is right, when it's absolutely necessary, people do come out and show up. They do call their elected officials. They do demonstrate their discontent. And when I talk to people just in the community, Red Hill is on everyone's mind all the time. It's like in the background. It's a source of stress and concern. People, there's not a lot that we can do, right? We are held hostage by the military, and all we can do is hope for the best, that they don't make another mistake and our water supply is not further damaged.
Wayne, your thoughts on just the overall community support and how things have been for you and your organization over the last few months, and your thoughts moving forward as how do you continue to keep the community engaged in this effort?
Yeah, community has been everything in this effort. It's not just Sierra Club of Hawaii now, but we have groups like the Oahu Water Protectors, Shutdown Rahid Mutual Aid, Kauhewai, the Shimanchu Y Protectors, that have been instrumental in bringing us this far. But that being said, we're still deep in the woods, and so people need to keep following the issue. You can sign up for action alerts on our website, sierraclubhawaii.org. And talk to each other. Remind each other that there's still so much work to be done, and we can't let up. We can't relax, because once we do that, then the Navy will start doing that, and then we'll maybe see the same pattern that we've seen since 2014, 2015 with the last big spill.
All right. Well, Marti Townsend and Wayne Tanaka, thank you both for joining me this morning and sharing your thoughts on the ongoing situation at Red Hill. Really appreciate your insights this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha. Well, great to hear from both of them as they continue to be involved, of course, in two organizations that have been dealing with this Red Hill issue for some time now. You heard from them saying that they appreciate the expedited process and timeline that the military has put forth, saying that the military, again, saying that they're about 6 months ahead of scheduled, but there is still some trepidation and some concern over just the process itself. And once that defueling begins, what that's going to look like, assuming that everything goes according to plan, recognizing that this is a very old facility. You heard some of the comments that they made about some of the repairs that had to be done in order to begin this defueling process and what that could ultimately mean about the process itself. And just making sure that they are keeping up to date with some of these efforts as they continue to move through the process. We heard also just their concern that for the military families and those civilian families as well that have been impacted directly from the drinking water and have been exposed to that contaminated water and the struggles that they continue to go through, some of them financially, of course, many physically. And also noting that there is a call out. You heard from the director of the Sierra Club there saying that there needs to be an on-island water testing facility that checking for these water testings that happen sometimes takes as long as 3 months to get the results back from the mainland. And that by that point in time, that could be too late. So as this ongoing effort goes to monitor the waters in and around Red Hill and those who have been impacted, the suggestion and the thought is to have a more an on-island facility that could assist in these efforts. But throughout the interview, you heard them crediting the community for really helping them get to this point, and their encouragement to continue to stay on top of this issue as they move through with the military. We'll continue to track this. Of course, this will be an issue for some time now, but we always appreciate getting both sides. We're also going to be speaking to some military officials in the coming weeks to get their take as well on the process and get an update from them on some of the repairs that are currently happening at Red Hill. On Friday, we're going to be switching gears and we will be joined by Governor Josh Green, who no doubt has been watching this process closely as well. I want to get his thoughts on how he believes the military is handling Red Hill. But of course, we always have a lot to talk to the governor about. This is a time where the governor is entering post-session, where he is examining a number of bills and the veto list. There's also some talk about the end of the legislative process this past session and how the governor feels overall things have gone through and just crafting the budget and looking forward as new financial forecasts are predicted and tourism numbers are being released. Always interesting to get the governor's take on how things are projecting and how he's formulating and thinking through the budget in the next fiscal year. Also getting an update on his Kauhale efforts and those homes that are being set up, especially the one that has been set up right across Queens Hospital and that respite center as well. So we look forward to catching up with Governor Green. We hope that you'll join me and Yunji, who will be returning on Friday, right back here for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, take care and aloha.